Thank you very much, Father, for your time this morning. So healing is different for different people, perhaps different for those who were directly involved, those in the communities where the looting and unrest happened. Is that likely to be different for those of us who just viewed it from afar?
I think that there are a political dimension, an economic dimension, spiritual dimension, emotional dimension. So what happened, we know, was because many of our people are hungry and desperately poor. Their hunger was exploited for political ends. So part of the healing would come when we become a more compassionate nation, when, for example, there's more done to guarantee food sovereignty. When we see people getting work, when we have a basic income grant, and the bringing back of the 350 rands allowance, and even higher than that. At the political level, clearly there was a failure of the intelligence, and we had this quarreling between the Minister of Intelligence and the Minister of Police. Do they face up to that? You know? And if the nation sees facing up and admitting their shortcomings, I think that would help us to heal. But
Father, I'm going to jump in there because I want to ask you a question about that type of healing. From what you've described, it sounds very much like our healing as South Africans collectively is very much in the hands of the government, which is frightening.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying this political, social, economic, and all. And so it's not in the hands, it's also in our own hands. So, there's an expression, a problem shared is a problem halved. So we had anger and fear and frustration as a nation. So we need to find what I like to call safe spaces, be it in a family, be it in intimate relations, when we can talk about what we're feeling with people whom we trust, because sometimes those feelings can go completely out of control and perspective if they're rushing around inside us, causing, if you like, increasing toxicity. So I think it's part of how do we take our anger and frustration and fear and transform that into a commitment to a different kind of South Africa, following a deep introspection, because these kinds of actions will keep happening if we don't face what kind of society we've become and if we don't face the depths of our inequality. So we have to ask, what kind of nation do we want to live in South Africa? What do we want to bequeath to our children and our grandchildren? So that's also part of healing. And when we are able to take that deep emotion and transform it into a commitment to justice, that can also help us heal. But also we could remember during those terrible days, we saw South Africa at its worst, but we also saw it at our most beautiful. We saw communities coming together across the country, across racial lines, people acting with kindness and generosity, making sure that people had their medication. So that also will help us heal as we remember not the most terrible things that happened, but hold on to those acts of human solidarity that we experienced during those days.
That's also something that we need to take forward, though, because what we saw was communities coming together across socio-economic lines, across cultural and racial lines. But unfortunately, if it stops at just cleaning up the local mall, that dialogue, that real deep nitty-gritty what has caused this dialogue doesn't happen. So how do we facilitate dialogue that has been lacking in more than 25 years of democracy?
Well, I think in a way, one of the things that emerged during those last days was leadership at a very, very, very local level. We were failed in some ways by national leadership. But then we saw leadership in local communities, people coming and speaking for the community, arising, a natural kind of leadership. And I think it's in those places, every level of our society, we need to have that conversation. As you say, not just to clean up the mess, and there were beautiful things that happened there. We had students, young people, people, old people, people in wheelchairs coming to help clean up. But we need to move that conversation, if you like, from relief to development, from relief to a commitment to justice. And I think it's recognizing that the future of South Africa doesn't belong to the government, it doesn't belong to political parties, it doesn't belong to the faith communities, it belongs to all of us, and all of us can be subjects of creating a different kind of South Africa, beginning very much at a community level, and also manifesting itself when we have our forthcoming local government elections, when they eventually happen, but looking for leaders with integrity, leaders with moral vision, and not simply voting for people who have the loudest voice, who articulate our fears, but don't articulate the hopes for a just society.
And perhaps this unrest we've seen recently will be the event that triggers those leaders with morality, because we do believe that they have to exist to step forward and claim their space in the leadership of South Africa. Thank you very much for speaking to us. That was Father Michael Lapsley from the Institute for Healing of Memories.